guess I should start. Well, my name is actually Maria Laura. I'm 21 years old, and my pronoun is her. Well, I actually come from an apolitical family. My father comes from a province where people work on agriculture, and my mom was a maid, and so I started my political work because of the feminist movement, and that's because in my family we didn't talk about politics, but we did it at school. One of our teachers took us to our first Ni Una Menos march, and I started reading left-wing media, and that's because they were the only ones who were on the streets every time we wanted to do a march or something. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, I think there's echoing. Laura, creo que sos vos. Si te silencias. Right. I'm Ignacio. You can call me Nacho. My pronouns are he and him. And well, I'm 24 years old. I study philosophy. And well, I started organizing around 5 years ago. Once 5 or 6 years ago when I started going to university. And what you say? Well, I didn't come from very political family either, but well, I always like history, philosophy, and all of that. So I took an interest in that, and I started reading left-wing stuff, and then I joined university, and there's a lot of activism there. So I met some friends, some comrades, and I started, talking politics with them, doing stuff with them, and I ended up joining the org. It's been like 5 years already, I think.
Well, my name is Guillermo. Call me Guillermo. Easier to say. Actually, I'm 24 years old. My pronouns are he, him. I'm studying history right now, and I started organizing 4 years ago, in 2018, around the time after the first time the abortion law was discussed in Congress. It didn't pass that time, and after occupation of the university, there was a time where the teachers unions were on strike because of pay issues and other working conditions. The university was occupied by the students in solidarity. It was when we still had the presidency of the Centro de Estudiantes, and I actually met Nacho there, first person I met. And yeah, I started going with things with them, different activities, different marches. I progressively became more convinced of the ideas, the methods, And then I said, yeah, this is for me. I mean, that was it, honestly.
Yeah, so I feel like you mentioned the Centro just now, so maybe this is a good segue into just starting the discussion and maybe talking about sort of what is a Centro de Estudiantes, because it is sort of a foreign concept to an American audience. What purpose does it serve? How does it function?
I can talk about that. Yeah, so it's well, I think you mentioned in something you wrote about this meeting, that it's like a union for students, and it kind of works like that. Of course, it's not a union because students aren't workers, and actually there's well, you know, the interesting thing about universities is that uh, they're like a resonance box of society, because you have people in universities that are from the working class, from higher uh, income backgrounds and everything. So you have like a place where young people from all society come, you know, and are often more politicized than in other places. So, but yeah, that's how the Centro de Estudiantes worked. That's if you want to call it something, you can call it like, I don't know, student center or something like that. I don't know. I think you had something similar, Julian. You mentioned something like that, and well, yeah, um, yeah, it's a like that, like a union, and as in, you know, there's elections once every year, and there's you know, a governing is elected, and other groups have different representations and everything. But well, that's like the general concept. Then there's many ways in which it can function, and it all depends on, you know, what the activism of that university is like, uh, how the organizations are and everything. Because like in our university, well, not exactly university, our section of the university, which is the from philosophy and letters, and here it's pretty left wing, pretty democratic. At least it has that kind of tradition. You know, we do assemblies pretty often, and decide everything democratically there, and we'll have pretty democratic elections. In other places, the centros de estudiantes are kind of different in bigger parts of the university, like what you call it, I think it's law or medicine part of the university. Well, of course, they're much bigger places, and there's many more students, and the governing bodies of those centros de estudiantes are well, they have different political representations, and they're more from right-wing parties oftentimes, and they have like a lot of good relationship with the governing bodies of the universities themselves and of those political parties. So they often try to, well, not this, like in our university, the Centro de Estudiantes is a place where you can democratically organize with other students from your part of your university, right? That's the idea. But in other places, like the Centros de Estudiantes are more like administrative bodies that administrate different things, like, I don't know, oh, what do you call them?
A cafeteria or
A cafeteria.
photocopies.
Yeah, that they make the photocopies for, you know, all the text that the students have to use and everything, and other kind of things like that. And they're basically, in that sense, they're pretty similar to what, like, keeping up with the comparison with a union. They're pretty similar to how union bureaucracies work. You know, they try to tell the how you call them, the students that, oh, okay, we are here to give you things. We'll give you good prices of the cafeteria. We'll give you a good service for your photocopies and everything. And they'll try to compete in who gives the best things to the students. And try to dissuade him from actually organizing, right? In our university, I mean, of course, you have different organizations which are more like that or less like that, but there's more of a tradition about the Centro de Estudiantes being a place where you can organize with other people. That when the fight for the right of abortion was up and it was being voted in Congress, the Centro de Estudiantes, we were the leadership at the time. We set up a tent close to Congress where all the students of the university could go if they were around and everything, and all of that. And well, of course, when we there was this conflict with the teachers and everything about wages and about the conditions and the budget of all the university, because it's been hit throughout like this government and the previous government with a lot of austerity measures. All the budget has been cut every year basically, and well, the teachers were against that, of course. Well, we occupied the university in protest and in solidarity, and well, like everyone's, I mean, when we decided to occupy the university, we did it in an assembly with a lot of people. We voted on it, and every week of occupation, every couple of days actually, there was another assembly to decide how we were gonna organize the occupation, what things needed to be done and everything, etc., etc. And the interesting thing is that because of this big conflict, it was a pretty big national conflict, and even in universities where they didn't have as the tradition that were as democratic, there were still, you know, a big assemblies that the students organized by themselves against those more bureaucratic leaderships, and decided to occupy their universities too, all across the country and everything. So that's basically how what the Centro de Estudiantes is and what it can be. But it all depends a lot on how what traditions does it have, and of the organizations that do work there, and of course of the leadership to a degree. And well, first and foremost, yeah, I think I said it right, about the what activism all of the students have, and everything. Like in our part of university, they're pretty used to this way of functioning. They're pretty left-wing people too, to one degree or another. In others, it's pretty different because they're very big places where a lot of people go. But in a moment where there was a conflict from the teachers and about the university and the conditions that are there, students that impose more democratic, more active roles upon the bureaucracies that led their Centros de Estudiantes.
Lau, Guille, do you have anything you would like to add to that?
I think he summed it up really well. It's honestly, it was pretty detailed. But yeah, most of the times nowadays, Centro de Estudiantes in many parts of the country maybe is there is a relation that the students have with that is like this thing that Nacho said, that okay, now no more traditional political forces now in the Centro de Estudiantes like to offer, I don't know, the cheapest coffee, the cheapest photocopies, for example. And the students are like, oh yeah, that's what the Centro Estudiantes do. That what it's always do. And there is like sometimes a separation between the political and the educative part for saying that. And I think that one thing that we do that like that as left-wing activists we do, as Trotskyists left-wing activists we do, is saying, no, wait, this is not a thing that we do to obtain cheaper things. We do this also to, we organize here just to fight that for better student conditions, better timetables, better budget for the university. I think it's a fight that we have to do, because if not, the definition that every student gets of Centro Estudiantes is like, oh, okay, yeah, sure. Give me like 1 peso cheaper photocopy, and that's fine. But for that, I'm fine. But it's not like a necessary bad thing. It's like a common sense thing, because it's very implemented today. But I think this is more like yes, it's an objective that we have to do, not only in philosophy and letters, but in the rest of the parts of the UA where we are.
Yeah, so I guess could you all maybe talk then about how you fight for those rights? Maybe you could talk about the experience of the new building. You guys did just have an assembly the other day, so maybe you could use that as a way to illustrate, in addition to maybe telling some of the history of how you struggled. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Actually, the building and the cafeteria, it was actually was obtained long before we enter into organizing. So it kind of preceded us, but it was around 2010, 2011. Nacho, no, see, 2010, 2011. There was actually another occupation of the university demanding this already said building, a building that its classroom will be guaranteed to a common class, because how to explain this? Well, you know that in Argentina, the university is public. You don't pay to go for it. You don't need to pay a fee. It's state funded if you want. But there is a little thing that is called a doctorado, or postdoctorado.
Like a PhD.
Yes, PhD. Thank you, Nacho. If you want to do that in university, you need to pay. You usually have discounts because if you are a student of that university. But
Yeah, if you studied there, you don't have to pay. But from other places, if you come from some other place, you do have to pay, and that's how
actually. If you are from
university
another country or you are from another university, you have to pay, and it's quite expensive if you have any consideration. It's not crazy, but it will cost you a good amount of money. I have a friend actually, Mary Julian, who was from Puerto Rico, who was paying to do a history PhD in the same in letters and philosophy. So we demanded they demanded, all the students demanded that building would be guaranteed for normal classes. So every student, because in the university it's very usual to have overcrowded classrooms, you need to sit on the floor, you cannot enter the classroom if you are late by any chances. And usually if you need to work, that would mean that you would go to your class and say, oh, great, I can sit here. So I need to work from the outside. Also, our building is very deteriorated. It has quite a lot of problems, insufficient heat, insufficient electricity, falling windows also. But okay, yeah. As you see, it was a fucking mess, pardon my French. But that was the first demand. A new building with new classrooms, everything in condition, just for better conditions of study. Second of all was the cafeteria, because a cafeteria that would be accessible to everyone, to every student. You know, cafeterias often are run by the Centro Estudiantes, the student centers, but there was a demand of us that said, hey, no, we shouldn't, honestly, we shouldn't be running this. It should be the government who will funding, access to cheap food, to drink, just for us to study. Sometimes you need to be in the university 6 hours, 8 hours. I've seen some crazy people who are there 11 hours. Those are the more extreme ones, but it happens. So yeah, you need to be access to drink something or eat something. But not also for the students themselves. We also thought it was also thought as a means of maybe the poorer people of the area to come and have be able to eat and drink as it is the right. So that was another thing. And the third one, the third principal demand, if you want it like that, was now with the new definition that we gave it but it would be a kindergarten.
Oh, like a child care facility.
Yeah, a child care facility. Thank you, a child care facility, because also there's a lot of students who have childs. They sometimes they have to. It's not an unusual sight in every faculty of the UA to see a mother with his son in the class. Actually, we have a comrade that has that situation. Actually, she needs to juggle between her son, her study, her work. So having a place where you can leave your children there and have a nice time is quite necessary for him, for the child, and for your right to study. It would be more. It will facilitate it. That's what I say. So, okay, the occupation is done. Everything that was demanded was accepted, but of course there was some catch. The construction of the building lasted a long time. It started way like in 2016. I remember I told you that this occupation was in 2010, so they delayed it. And also now that is finished, they're saying, okay, yeah, well, no, actually, they told us that they were going to open it this semester. Yes, this semester, and they say no. Actually, no, we're going to open it next year because we don't have the funds to install electricity. So they
said it was going to be this year, and then they
Yes.
said no, next semester. Now they're saying no, next year, and everything.
Yes, it's a continuously kicking forward of the thing because they don't have it ready, but they need to say like a cheap promise just to, I don't know, just for the students not to fucking hang them. And also, and for other things, for example, the cafeteria, they want to do it private. So they want a private company to hold it and run it, basically. That would be against, of course, or demand for demanding, hey, accessible prices. How we can have accessible prices if we have a private company running it? It would be all for profit. So yeah, you are actually breaking one of your promises, we honestly. So that, and about the childcare facility, they are not doing it because they don't care to do it. So now the fight that we have is, okay, you need to, okay, our fight actually is to say, hey, we need to fight for these demands that you actually agree to, but you are not complying to do. So that was in part why we did the assembly this week. It was to demand, hey, we're going to fight for this. We're going to fight for this building. We're going to fight for the cafeteria where we all commit. We're going to fight for a childcare facility. So yeah, that's mostly the part. The good thing is we actually won that assembly with a declaration that said, hey, we need to fight for this against the wish of the actual presidency that just was how to say it, a pawn of the governing body of the university, if you wanted that. Not sure you want to.
Yeah, they basically, I mean, the current, yeah, presidency of the Centro Estudiantes is Well, it's Kirchnerist, which is, you know, the current government that Argentina has. And well, while before in the previous government, they said they were oppositionist and they were against austerity and everything. Now their government came to power and they started implementing austerity. And and when they started, I mean, they always posed as oppositionists and against all of this. And now they're in government. They're basically, you know, just yeah, as he said, the pawn of the government, of the university itself and of the country as a whole. So they just they came to this assembly basically just wanting to tell the people, tell the students what the government body of the university had already said and nothing else. It's and it has to do with all of this that we said about how all there's some more bureaucratic organizations try to incentivize the passive roles of the student and how they are going to give the students everything they want, or every good thing they want. They just have to vote for them, etc. That probably rings a bell for all of you. But while we say, okay, no, we have to organize. This is the Centro de Estudiantes is a place where all students have to organize, can organize, and the more they do, the better it will be, the better it will function. And luckily, well, in the assembly, it didn't go well for them. So yeah, it's about it.
Okay.
I want to say nothing related to this, but Laura connection just went off. She's trying to enter again.
Yeah, she's having technical problems.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, so I feel like you guys have been able to outline some stuff pretty well. But I was curious if maybe you could go into now just a little bit about, we're sort of starting to talk about it with austerity, but sort of the current situation with the IMF in Argentina and maybe how that impacts students in particular, in addition to, you know, generally, obviously, working people. And maybe also what you are doing as students in particular to resist it.
Yeah, well, yeah, so basically Argentina is not doing very well right now. And yeah, the previous government took a big loan with the IMF. And it, together with a lot of other previous debts the country had, accumulated all together, and now this government is constantly negotiating with the IMF all the political all the economic and political measures that have to happen in this country. The other day, basically, the ambassador of the United States in Argentina said to all the political parties that they have to make a coalition and try to like, I don't know, implement an economic policy altogether, because basically there's this big economic crisis and there's a lot of political turmoil in the more higher spheres, because they don't know what to do, because everybody is pretty pissed off at the current state of the economy. And there's a projection of like 90% inflation. You're having problems with inflation. You have no idea what it's like over here. Like we wish we had 10% inflation over here, but yeah. So basically, so yeah, and this, it's pretty crazy, right? Because we had well, of course we had the pandemic and everything, but after when the pandemic started to ease off, Argentina started, and especially with the what you call it, with the war in Ukraine, Argentina has started to do pretty well in what is essentially its biggest market, which is like agricultural products, right? Argentina has a pretty big, pretty technically advanced agricultural sector, and it started doing very well, winning a lot of money. But the country is still doing pretty shit, and these people which made massive profits all across the pandemic, they're asking for more, right? And we also have the IMF asking for money, right? So the government, what does the government do? A government that said they were going to go back with the austerity measures that the Macri's government, which was a more neoliberal government, we were going to go back with that, and people were gonna eat asado again, which is a common saying over here. Like they're gonna eat good shit and everything, and suddenly everything is worse because what did they do? They have very rich people with a lot of money making extraordinary profits, and they have poor people, which we have like practically 50% poverty rate right now, almost there, like 40 something. It must be like around 40, yeah. And they say, okay, we have to pay the IMF. Who do we ask for money? Well, the poor people, clearly. We're gonna bring austerity measures to pensioners, to the people which need social security measures and everything, which they're people which have no formal jobs, right? They have no stable incomes, and they get some social assistance from the government, and the government is saying, okay, no, you're gonna get less money, or we're gonna monitor everything you do, so we know you're very compliant, and if you stay compliant, we're gonna give you the money. If you do something wrong, we're gonna take it away from you, or you're basically not going to be able to eat. So that's what's currently going on in Argentina right now, and the situation is pretty tense. Argentina has pretty big unions, but most of them are held by pretty big bureaucracies, and which all support the government. But even those bureaucracies started to have to do some stuff. The other day, they had a pretty big march, which it was pretty weird because it was a pretty march against the bad economic condition, but it was in favor of the government and everything. And in those conditions, of course, the first things that the austerity measures are going to hit, well, they're going to hit, of course, social security programs. They're going to hit what do you call it? Well, pensioners and everything, and they're going to come, of course, against education. As I said, for the past, I don't know, 6 or 7 years, big austerity measures have been put forward against the education budget, and especially the budget of universities. So students and of course teachers have pretty big problem. There's a lot of teachers in our university actually which don't have a wage. They work for free, literally. So what can we do in that instance? Of course, well, we're revolutionaries, of course. So we don't just do stuff like for students and everything. We have a whole idea of how change has to be implemented in society. So we say, okay, what's the role of students in this place, in this moment? We have to be on the streets, fighting alongside every expression of discontent of the working people. We organize with precarious workers. We organize with union activists and everything. We go to different marches. We well, we organize with them, of course. And well, our role is we try to convey that role to spread that idea. And it's actually like Argentina has and the Argentinian students movement has a pretty big tradition of this. All the moments in Argentina of big civil unrest, all of it, every time students were active, and sometimes even they were spearhead of those moments. We started, well, actually Argentinian universities are often more politicized than in other places, because we had a very big students movement like over 100 years ago, the Reforma Universitaria, the university reform, which was a very big students movement in 1918, that basically said, okay, universities have to be free, and they have to what do you call it, their governing bodies have to be independent of the state, independent of the government, and everything. There was this very, very big movement that in a time where there was a lot of civil unrest too, and everything, and there were big revolts. There was a lot of shit going on in that moment. And also a little bit closer, like 50 years ago, it was the Cordobazo, which was basically like a big students and workers general strike, which pretty much took down a dictatorship like 50 years ago. And so there's a big tradition of in Argentina in particular, of students in solidarity with the working people, with all workers all around the country, to fight against the different governments. And well, it's a tradition that we try to bring back to our times as well. And I don't know, even in the United States, there has also been, like, there is also, at least there was a tradition of active students movements, especially during the war in Vietnam. Well, that the Cordobazo was pretty much at the same time over here. So like, yeah, that's the role that we want to, as revolutionaries organizing in the university. That's the ideas that we fight for, of solidarity with the working classes and everything.
All right, thank you so much, Nacho. Oh, Guijo, were you going to?
No, just to add some things. But Nacho, honestly, almost told it all. But because you made us a question that, okay, how do you organize students, or how we do to organize students in our university, and how does the crisis hit them, particularly? Well, just to start with the second question, well, okay, actually, a reduction of the budget in university, for example, creates less time possible for different subjects you need to do in your. If for example, I'm doing history, I need to do different subjects, and the reduction of the budget shrinks the time frame that I have to do that. For example, and I worked, like, I need to work. I work a non-registered job, 4 hours a day, not much. I earn shit, of course. I think I earn like less than $100 per month. Like, it's very bad. But the problem is that all the subjects of the university, they are like when I work, like every hour that there is, I have like a very limited chance to go to university. And Nacho has this problem, Laura, when also has that problem, had that problem. But yeah, that's like a very tangible thing. Also, well, because the economic situation is too bad, most of the time you need to get a job, because it's not easy to pay for transport. More now that there was a raise in the buses fee. So, you know, sometimes people need to leave because A, they have to work and they can't study, or B, because they can't pay it. It is weird because I said that education here is public. But, well, yeah, that doesn't mean that everyone can access to it in practice. Like, well, if you can pay the bus, you can go. That is simple as it is, and it's tragic. It's a very tragic thing. Your right to study is not being fulfilled in any way or form. So yeah, like a very tangible thing that happens to the three of us, and a lot more comrades and people that are not comrades to us, but our friends, even our teachers. Our teachers have to do like sometimes three different works in a week. Like, that's a lot. That's crazy. That's a lot of hours for one teacher. In different universities, even different time frames, it's crazy. But well, okay, it's the economic crisis. You need to live, you need to work, and everything is harder to to achieve, if you want to use that word. And now, returning to the first question, how do we organize students? Well, actually, Nacho said it, and I said it before. We are Trotskyists, the three of us. We are from the revolutionary left, if you wanted that. We are in the PTS, that is the Partido de Trabajadores Socialistas, in English, Socialist Workers' Party. And as Nacho said, we think, okay, we need to fight for our demands as students, but together with the working class, because we think that students have as Nacho said, have an important role through Argentinian history, through all history, honestly. But if you want to keep in Argentina, Nacho said, Cordobazo, Reforma Universitaria. Well, in 2018, with this education conflict that was there, yeah, we need to fight for the students, but we believe also that we will achieve those goals fighting back to back with the working class. It's an strategic goal to do that. And we also come from and as also Nacho said, we come from a very left-wing university. And that honestly makes, I won't say that it's easy, but it's easier to carry that message to the people studying there when the auditorium is more on the left side. That also is not guaranteed, is also easier when, well, as a national level, we're inside the what is called Frente Izquierda Unidad, would be Left Front Union, if you want that. I think that's a very weird tradition to say it. Is Frente Izquierda de Trabajadores Unidos, actually. I'm going to use the acronym in Spanish, if you don't mind, FITU. Well, FITU actually is, electoral alliance of organizations who think, who are actually Trotskyists as the rest of us, have an anti-capitalist programs, have a basic program of demands that we all agree to. We run in elections as that. In the last election, we achieved an historic 6% of the vote. Is the best result of any left in Argentina ever. But we also use that to say, hey, well, okay, there is a representation. But I said this because we, as militants, if you want, as political organizers, we say, hey, look, there is a political force that is working here to carry forward our demands as students, our demands with the working class, who fights for the betterment of the working class, who fights for the betterment of poor people, who fights for the betterment of the end of oppression, massive. And you need to, and we use that to say, hey, it's not like there is no voice that represents you. There is a voice that represents you. There is a voice that carries a message to end this life of misery and suffering. But actually, life is beautiful. Forgive me for saying that, as Trotsky said, life is beautiful, but we are in perpetual oppression for capitalism. Salary, time, we spend most of life working in jobs that don't offer us much except breadcrumbs to live for. And we say to the students, hey, we can fight for this. We need to fight for this. We want to improve education. We want to improve our way of life. Fight with us with this. And we also, but it's not also preaching, it's the methods that count. So we have, as I said, left-wing revolutionaries have truly democratic methods. We discuss all of our things. With the people that we know, we try to, to, sorry, got like a little, no, yes, we try to sorry, the word left me. Yes, we try to take these means of organization to not only to us, but the majority of the students is what we do. And as I said, we discuss everything. We do assemblies, not only in the student center, but us, to discuss politics with these people. Hey, man, you're interested in doing this? Okay, come. Hey, here, come, discuss with us. We don't have any problem with it. What do you think do you have to do? What do you think that we need to do in this situation? And sometimes people don't agree with us, but we discuss and we try to convince. If we can convince, okay, that's fine. But it's actually, it's like our objective, you know, to go to these people and try to convince them in a good way, to see that we are something different from the traditional politics that predominates in Argentina, like classically, and to say, hey, man, you know, you want to fight for the end of capitalism, you want to fight for the end of this system operation, okay, we want to fight for that too. And we want to create like a truly revolutionary party who can lead the masses to victory and the end establish communism. I know that I drift apart from the university center aspect, but I think that every politics you do in an organization and a political organization should have like a more global implication, if you want. Your politics needs to be from the university, but also needs to be for something more. You cannot like separate university and politics. You cannot do strictly one or the other. You need to join them. And I think you also need to do in this is like, well, from little demands, little, like, well, the new building, I don't know, a reduction in bus fees or a special fee for students, or demanding like better studying hours. You need to like evolve that fights into a more anti-capitalist fight. I know it sounds like crazy, but it's a work that we have to do. It's like every fight it allows you to show that, hey, man, the root of this problem, but man, woman, sorry, kind of, in English it costs me a little. The root of the problem is capitalism, and if you want everything to go better, you need to destroy it and create a better society. So yeah, I went a little bit overboard, but I think that it was necessary to cover that question.
All right, well, yeah, thank you so much, Guille. But so yeah, now I'm just gonna open up the floor. If people have questions that they would like to ask, I feel like we've gotten like a solid introduction. Now we can just sort of make this a more informal conversation, transnational. Yeah. All right, Emma, go ahead.
Hi. Thank you so much. I especially appreciate what you're saying, Guille, about like how all this is an anti-capitalist fight and needs to be focused on abolishing capitalism. One thing I'm really curious that kind of relates to that about like how the university fight goes beyond. So like Within the US, like I feel like most leftists at universities have like a pretty negative like sense of the way their university like plays a role in society, and like see them as like institutions of like colonialism that like enforce white supremacy and serve to like protect whiteness, and often have like really harmful effects to the surrounding communities. And given that at least UBA Philo is so much more left than the universities in the US. Like being around and like seeing the communist art, like we could not get I'm not to go off on a whole story, but we put up some posters one time and like they tried to like fine us money. So then to come and see all the communist symbols on the walls, I was like, oh my God, our universities are a joke. But but anyways, I'm like curious about like the relationship between the universities and like the outside world, and if there's like harm that the universities like cause to it, or if it's more like the fights within the university are more about how the students are treated, or if there's that other part of it as well.
Yeah, so yeah, absolutely. It's also, I mean, as students in our university, it's you have a pretty what do you call it, privileged place in the good sense of the word. Like I get a pretty privileged place to no, have a more ideological struggle, you know, have more ideological discussions with other students and everything. So yeah, definitely all of this stuff about you know, this discussing about, well, communism, us there are communism, but about politics in general and ideology and everything different. I mean, it's different in every university, of course, but in Philly Letras, well, you have of course you have a history, you have a philosophy, and so there's a lot of discussions about different ideologies, different schools of thought and everything, and there's a lot of discussions you can have about that. And there's also still pretty established ideas. There's a sort of establishment in every university, in every like different well, in different subjects in anthropology or in history, etc., of different modes of types of thought, right? So in well, I study philosophy, so in philosophy you have a lot of Kantians and everything, yada yada yada. So yeah, there's a lot of the university is a pretty good place to discuss about ideology and everything, and it does, I mean, about what you were saying about the US and how they are ideological institutions that put forward white supremacy and everything. Of course, that has historically been an issue, but has also, like, these are not simple like ideological structures or institutions that just do this. I mean, there has always been, to a lesser or to a greater degree, ideological struggles within universities, as there have always, especially been carried out by students themselves. Students are always more to the left than the establishment of the university, and they are always more willing to talk about new things, to discuss new things, and to propose new things. So as students, even in the US, and even in the US, and I think especially in the US for you, it's a pretty big big task to bring those discussions, all those ideological more ideological things to university, to the students, because they often are more political people, you know, so you can discuss all of this with them, and of course questions all of these ideas of whites in the US, of course, white supremacy, colonialism, etc., imperialism, and all of that, and and yeah, so I think it's a very important task for you all, in the US to bring those discussions to the university and to discuss them, you know, in a serious manner, and take all of these discussions seriously, and study all that you need, and come up with new or better, more refined responses to all of these issues. Because I think in that sense, universities are always the spearhead of these new ways of thinking, new what do you call them? New questions posed about the more established ideas of society.
Thank you so much.
Does anyone else want to ask something?
I was curious to ask them all about the leftist feminist movements in Argentina, and like words of solidarity and advice to folks in the US organizing right now for abortion rights. We are descending into a very like unimaginable state, I don't know, right now with state of abortion. And that's something that like has been co-opted by a very liberal and centrist feminist. So I was curious like how you keep a very radical politic in your organizing on feminist issues. And like, I feel like I go to a historically women's college, which is something that's very special to a certain breed of like liberalism in the United States. So like there's a lot of issues with the environment that I'm in, but I was just curious like how we can energize like a leftist politic with like the state of things right now, and abortion being like a very prominent issue in the news and such.
Yes. Well, Leona just sent a message because we are part of an international socialist feminist organization, which is called Pan y Rosas, now also in the US, Red and Roses. And well, we are part of the abortion fight since the beginning here in Argentina. There is this Campaña por el Derecho al Aborto, national campaign for the right to abortion, I think, which is like a coalition of more than 300 organizations in which we take part. And this coalition presented a draft law back in 2007. But the problem is that no left or center left presidencies wanted to discuss that. For example, the presidencies of Nestor and Cristina Kirchner just didn't discuss the law. And it was actually during the left-wing administration of Mauricio Macri that we could take it to the Congress. The problem is that both coalitions have candidates which represent the church. Yes, right-wing administration of Mauricio Macri. Well, both coalitions actually have candidates who represent the church, and that is why we fight in the streets as a movement. But with the Frente Izquierda, we propose another political strategy in alliance with the working class, and without relying on those capitalist parties. In fact, the actual government had to put abortion on its agenda because of the enormous fight, but also because many people trusted on their administration. But their draft, also they changed the draft, the original draft law, and they included some restrictions which had been negotiated with reactionary sectors and the church in exchange of the votes that they needed in the Congress. And therefore, abortion is still not guaranteed in provinces where the church has a lot of power. And we still have to rely on our own organization from below in order that to ensure that it is fully implemented in hospitals, and that our right is not turned back, such as we see it now in the US, because it is, also they still have the power to change laws, and we can't rely on those parties. But just in our own force in the streets and our alliance with workers, also workers are in hospitals, and it will not be possible to change this society without them there.
People, just feel free to start talking, ask a question. Don't be shy.
Yeah, I'll send it in the chat.
Yeah, I think I have a question. I might have lost the context because I came in a little bit later. But I was curious how much structure already existed. Like, I think a lot of you said like 24, 26, and I feel like in my experience, I think of student organizing as undergraduate, because that's what I am, and I'm in my senior year, and I feel like I am already losing time to organize as a student. And I know it's very different because with public schools being free, I know it's still inaccessible in Argentina, but still I feel like there's more opportunities to organize as an older student. Anyway, I was curious whether you had how much structure you had built up yourselves versus what had already existed, and how easy or difficult that has been. This might be redundant to what you've already been saying, but I might have missed it.
Just one question. Structure in what sense? Maybe it's not a term we often use.
Oh yeah, I guess just leadership, and if you had a not formula, but a way of doing certain things, if you are deciding that you're now gonna protest the university or advocate for certain students about a certain issue, if you knew exactly what to do, if there was a lot of trial and error, and if there were already leaders who knew how to navigate that and taught you, or if you were kind of starting from scratch. Just curious about that process.
Well, actually, I think that revolutionary politics, whenever it is trial and error. But that doesn't mean that we started from zero. We actually have a lot of comrades who were much older than us. That excuse me. That they give us their experience during worse times even. There's a lot of our comrades that were revolutionary left-wing militants during the last military dictatorship. So that experience is invaluable, because they were politically organized in a moment where everything was legal, and it wasn't like you go to jail, you can die, you could die, they could kill you, or disappear you. So that experience, they transfer it to us. They talk about it to that, so we can use that experience or the lessons that they get, so that we can apply it to our time, to our particular situation, and also to our particular structure, if you want, that is the university. We don't necessarily start as zero. We have also a lot of comrades in other areas. We have comrades that are workers, they work in different factories, public, state workers. And there's a lot organization that sorry. Excuse me. We're an organization that actually has been building itself in a lot of working sectors, student sectors. We also have people from high school that are our comrades. So I think that it's helpful in a way because, well, we say we want to unite the working class with the students. Well, we actually do that in our party, you know, and we also get the lessons of different conflicts even that they transmit to us, and we learn, and they also learn from us. I know it could be difficult to say, but our fights, they also learn from our fights. It's not a thing that the more experience just teaches us how to do organizing, but also we sometimes teach the more experienced guys how to do things. Because yeah, I know it's a perpetual exchange, you know, like I think every revolutionary organization should be, where tactics are always discussed, strategy is always discussed between all the members, and I think that's how you create like a truly revolutionary politics, and that's how you are able to also to have the best strategy to the best moment and the best tactic to the best action, I think. About the question that you said about it is easier to organize in Argentina. Well, I wouldn't know because I don't know the specificities of the United States, but I think that the question should be, it depends how convinced you are of what you are doing. I think there lies the question, the pillar, if you wanted that. Because yeah, as I said, for example, I'm working right now, Nacho is working right now, Lau goes on and off about shitty job just to pay his rent and everything like that. And believe me, it sometimes demands a lot of time, not counting our study, which demands a lot more time. But I think that when we are convinced of what we're doing, and you have like because sometimes you can have doubts. You may have, oh, man, what I'm doing. You can have that doubt, but I think also your comrades help you a lot in that. It's like, hey man, you talk to them, you convince yourself of the politics you're doing. You are sure that you convince yourself that you are fighting for what you believe to be just and right. And that helps a lot. That helps a lot, really. That helps you organize yourself with the organizing, doing different marches, different actions. It allows you. It allows you to give yourself time to do it. I think it's very important to be, I think, supported. That, but I think also that it's very important to be convinced of what you are doing. Not to keep always the eyes on the objective. You see, always remember why are you doing the things that you're doing? Why are you fighting? Why are you fighting? What you want to create? What you want to achieve in long terms. It could be possible that you won't see it on your lifetime, but that's our goal. It's a selfless goal. If you want to say it in that way, because I know, I think ideas are very important in that. And the more you're convincing your ideas, the more time you will have to organize and do it. At least in my personal experience. Of course, I don't want this to be understood that you're not convinced enough, so you don't have the time. No, I don't want to say that. I'm just saying that it really helps a lot to have like a clear objective, a clear way, comrades to support, that support you and you support them. And I think also to think that you are doing the right thing, if you want to say it in a very basic way. I don't know if I answered your question.
Also, I would say a very particular thing of organizing at university and everything is that there's nothing, I mean, there's no so much of a structure, you know, the campaigns, the things that you do are always more prone to change with the time. So you have to look at the concrete things you have, the concrete things that are happening. And as you know, a left-wing person, I would say a revolutionary, but no, how many of you are completely convinced of that? But as a left-wing person, what are the things that are happening right now? Not just at the university, but in your case, in the United States. What things are happening, and how can you like how can you influence in that? And I think, well, for that, well, that's the thing. You have to think what things can you do? Where is it important that you do something? And especially when also what are the principles that you act with? So in the US right now, like, yeah, I would say you have two pretty big things, two mostly important things. You have well, maybe three, but you have, first off, the fight for the right of abortion, of course. You're returning of Roe versus Wade. Well, of course, especially in university with a lot of young people, there's I bet there's a lot of interest in that and a lot of discussion around that. So you have to, I would say, okay, we have to organize. We have to do things about this, and that's a pretty big thing. And then, well, you also have, there's a lot of a new working movement that is starting up in the US. You have new unions coming up in places where there were never any unions, and new people organizing, and new workers coming to terms with the fact that they're workers, and the fact that their bosses are their enemies. So you have to show solidarity with them. You have to show that the students movement can unite with the working movement. And then I would also say, of course, you are in the US, you have to fight against imperialism. You have to fight against US intervention in other countries, and everything, and all the ideas that come with it, more ideologically speaking. So that's the objectives that I would say more concretely you have in the US. And then you have to think, okay, we have to do something about this as students, as left-wing people. How do we act? And then you have to think, okay, what are the principles that we have? And I would say, well, first off, political independence of capitalist parties, of rich people's parties. In the US, you have a very bipartisan political system, and it is very clear that nothing good can come from either side of the of what is basically the same coin. So you have to say, okay, we have to organize independently of these political parties which don't represent us, don't represent the working people, which we are part of, on which are the people that we want to fight with. And then I don't know, basic ideas about, okay, how do we organize? Basic ideas about more democratic measures of how you organize in, I don't know, if there's the possibilities of organizing with people which are more a broader type of people in the university about, for example, abortion. Okay, you say, okay, let's I mean, let's make an assembly if you can. Like, let's decide democratically how do we have to act, because of course you want to avoid more bureaucratic forms which always end up co-opted by a more bureaucratic political party or organization, and that ends up leading nowhere. If you want people to come to terms with their ideas, to question their ideas, to put them to test even if they don't have the same ideas that you do. If you want to just tell them, okay, we don't have the same ideas, but we want to fight together. We have this idea, we have this objective we have together. For example, the abortion rights. Okay, we don't agree in everything, but we agree that we have to do something about it. Let's decide democratically. Let's discuss this openly, and let's decide what to do. And I will try to convince you of what I think, and I think that acting together, deciding democratically what to do, and acting together will end up convincing you. Maybe that's what you have to do. You never have to be afraid of what other people may think, or, oh, there's people, I don't completely agree with this person. I'm scared that their ideas maybe not completely good, but if we have a common idea with them, okay, a common objective with them, say, okay, let's organize together, let's democratically, and I will try to convince you. You will try to convince me or other people, etc. I think those are mostly the ideas of how you have to organize. And as I said, organization in the students movement is always changing. There's not much of a structure, because the things that are happening, the objectives, if you have more immediate objectives, I mean, may change. People come and go too, so you have to have a more, we say, more principles. I mean, you have to have clear principles and clear methods of how to organize. If you want to do it, I know you're seniors. Over here, it's not so much like that. People can last a long time in their university. They just different problems, and you can also come and go, even if you're not studying there anymore. I don't know if you can do that either. If you can do that over there, but yeah, basically that there's always a place, objectives to organize, and you will probably, if you can find people that share at least some of the objectives and some of the methods of how to organize, that you should organize with them, and then discuss your ideas openly, and try to come up with the best answers to the problems that are posed.
All right. I feel like we have time for maybe one more question. I don't want to be respectful of everyone's time, but maybe we could have one more question if anyone has one. Come on, I'm sure one of you, don't be shy. Don't be shy about being the last question.
If no one else has one, I have kind of a follow-up, but I'll give some time first. Okay, I'll go. So yeah, so kind of for context, like I'm Argentine as well, but I was born here. Yeah, my parents are both from Buenos Aires, and I'd love to go like for grad school or something like research wise, go and study in Buenos Aires again. And I'm just very curious, like, what is your perception of like more private universities in Buenos Aires or just outside of it? Because I'd really like to do research surrounding human rights and like maybe student organizing, but I am, and my parents have the same concerned that some of the private universities that I would most likely be paired up with would be too right wing for me to do anything really productive. And I'm curious, what are your thoughts on that? If it is kind of difficult or a lost cause, or if you think, no, like this is a great opportunity, or that there is like, there are a lot of people that are like capable of helping you in that.
Well, I think it is true that private universities over here are not very prominent. They usually have maybe a couple of things that are better, they're good at, but they're not very big. They're more specialized. Well, it depends really on what you're studying. I'm not very sure. I didn't get exactly what you would like to study. But I would say, I mean, there's maybe a few that are kind of right wing and not very good, like UADE, which is literally called like Argentinian company university or something like that, like it practically called capitalist university or something like that. So it's kind of right wing, yeah. But I know there's a couple which are, there's a few which are not bad, they're just private. So it would depend. Human rights, okay. I mean, if it's also a matter of organizing politically, I mean, you can study there, like do your course there, and then just go elsewhere. No, even you can go to, if you're interested in a class in UBA or something, you can just go there. Like just get in the fucking in the classroom and just listen to it, talk to the teachers, that they would love to hear you too. There's no problem with that. You just go to the classes, like you don't have to join. So that would not be a trouble. Organizing politically, also not a problem. So yeah, I would just look for the university which has the most prestige in something. I sadly I have to say, I think the Catholic University has a pretty good I don't know human rights, but at least like it has a pretty good like center, like special committee that studies the poor conditions in Argentina. So not all of them are bad. So I would just investigate a little bit. There's probably one which is not bad. And then you can, I mean, if it's also about politically organizing, and if you're interested in something that is being taught at UA or on another public university, you can just go and talk to the teachers and join the classroom. Nobody is going to bother you.
All right. Well, thank you everybody so much for coming. I hope that this has been helpful and generative for people in terms of thinking about their own student organizing, because I feel like probably a majority, if not all of the people here are student organizers. Yeah. Thank you all for coming. Have a nice night.
Good night.
Thank you so
Good night.
much for having us.